Welcome to the new Cyber Frontier, bringing you the latest news on the local Colorado economy and initiatives that focus on the development of cybersecurity economics. You don't have to be a computer or cybersecurity expert to get plugged in. Your host, Chris Gorog, brings it straightforward, asks the tough questions, and brings the cyber world to a level of understanding for everyone. Chris is personable and opens up with our guests on the issues we all would like to see addressed. You can find us on the web at www.newcyberfrontier.com. Now join our host as he introduces the topic for today's New Cyber Frontier.
This is Abe Thompson with New Cyber Frontier, coming to you from the SecureSet campus here in Colorado Springs. I have the distinct pleasure of having in the studio with me Mr. Willie Pee, who's the Principal Executive at Software Configuration Solutions. Welcome.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, it's a delight to have you here, especially knowing that you're a fellow Navy guy.
Absolutely.
Not that our sound engineer's in the Army or anything, but we still love him. So,
yes, we do.
So as we kind of jump in today, how'd you end up here? You know, you got that Navy start all the way back then, but something's happened since then, I'm sure.
Oh, absolutely. You know, I'm a grunt from Houston, Texas. Grew up in the rough part of Houston. Decided to get out of that environment.
Sure.
Went into the military, went to the Navy. Started, you know, as a grunt there as well, doing deck seaman. Got into storekeeping, right? Yeah, absolutely. And then got into computers.
Okay.
Once I got into the computer field, I felt like, you know, I wanted to get involved with software configuration solutions or software configuration management.
Sure.
From there now we know that it's morphed into DevOps,
Right.
Same concept, different word.
Sure.
Faster delivery per se.
Yeah.
But I've been in the industry for about 20 years. I've been working in that vein for about 20 years.
Excellent.
And it's something that I am passionate about. I love to solve problems. I love to make sure that your application and or components of whatever you're creating is getting out the door in a fashion that it works.
Sure.
Versus, you know, all these holes.
Yeah, so just as I imagine, we've got many students listening, hopefully my students for extra credit. But anyway, if you're listening out there as a student and you're interested, describe, Willie, the DevOps domain.
The DevOps domain, that's, you know, it's so broad today.
Sure.
As I stated, you know, coming in from a software configuration manager perspective,
Yeah.
you know, I'm that middle guy. I'm the bridge between development and quote unquote operations.
Sure. Yeah.
Now DevOps is that whole scope of business now. And so the domain really comes from supporting development.
Okay.
And the operations is part of that. I tell everybody that developers really run the business.
Sure.
Because they're creating the application for the business. Operations is kind of like, you know, quote unquote stepchild, right?
Mm-hmm.
They get all the grunt stuff, you know.
My, how the tables have turned.
Absolutely, right? But it's something that I think the industry should understand, that DevOps really, and I have a definition here if you don't mind me reading that.
Sure.
It's, if I can get my phone to operate correctly here.
Well, it's just technology.
My whole definition, and this is what I deem DevOps to be.
Sure.
DevOps is a level of collaboration, okay, and communication within the IT department, and supporting the software development lifecycle, our SSDLC. DevOps does not only support development and operations, but it also supports business executives,
Sure.
branch of the organization in communication with developers, testers, business analysts, project managers, in the effort to deliver an organization product to customers, and that's to the production environment, right?
Sure.
And so I look at DevOps as being the domain of people,
Yeah.
quote unquote people,
Yeah.
versus those tools that we are so high on learning to do DevOps.
Well, people are the doorway to exploitation, the doorway to
Absolutely.
the threat. They're also
Right.
the ones that use the tools.
Absolutely, exactly. Pick them, exactly right. Yeah,
And
absolutely.
brief them to, you know, principals and
Right.
CEOs and C-suite folks.
Absolutely,
For sure.
Absolutely.
So quite a scope, and you know, we talk about cybersecurity, and, you know, in my case as an industry, unto itself with a broad definition, and you just heard Willie just break out how just extensive even DevOps is inside of this domain.
Yes.
And then how about just sort of a branch off into DevSecOps? What's the difference?
The DevSecOps really is just moves around your security of your application.
Sure.
You know, running the scans from the development perspective.
Sure.
And then once you release that code, you're running another scan.
Yeah.
Right? That when it goes to production, that it has no vulnerabilities.
Sure.
And the DevOps paradigm is the exact same as DevSecOps. We're just adding a level of security. Working at Wells Fargo, I mean, they just started the DevOps process.
Restarted.
Exactly right. Yeah, there you go. But their methodology to it is excellent.
Sure.
You know,
sure.
they're running those checkpoints.
Well, it's good we can see somebody, learn a lesson from
Absolutely.
from a difficult time.
Right.
Let's take a quick break and go hear from our sponsor.
We'll be right back with the rest of today's show right after these brief messages from our sponsors. Cyber Resilience Institute helps build strong cyber communities designed to prevent members from attack. Like building a neighborhood watch, it takes coordination and a sharing community to protect our identities and valuables in the virtual world. Typically, we hear that organizations know they need to do something to protect their cyber assets, but don't know where to begin. Let Cyber Resilience Institute help your community create an action plan. Cyber Resilience Institute will build your community or business marketplace so that it is designed to support a collective cyber defense. Contact them for more information at cyberresilienceinstitute.org.
And this is Abe Thompson back with New Cyber Frontier. I have in the studio with me Mr. Willie Pee, the Principal Executive at Software Configuration Solutions, and we're talking about describing the DevOps domain and kind of the space now in which you've operated for
Absolutely, yes.
2 decades.
Yes.
And so as you sort of look back over those decades and the things that you've been involved in, what did it take to break out as we observe an expert in the field?
Well, it's, from my experience with the software configuration manager portion of DevOps, no longer, I understand that really is in the same vein. Now we're basically just saying development and operations, we want to basically collaborate together.
Sure.
We want to have that cohesive, if you will, relationship. Right? It's no longer my code, right? It's no longer your system.
Sure.
Now we are a team, that has come together. That's why I so advocate people, working together, because the DevOps process is so, with a culture change within your organizations, right?
Sure.
And people don't really want to change, right? They've been doing things 10, 15 years, right? What do we have to change now? It's not broke, Willie. So why do we have to fix it? Well, we're coming to a new paradigm where we're trying to get out your product faster.
Yeah.
This will allow you to get out your product faster, but we definitely have to come together as a unit, as a company in these different groups and areas to be able to do that.
And that's not just customer impatience. It's a reality.
It's a reality.
You have to deliver
Absolutely.
quickly, especially with the agile threats.
Absolutely right.
You got to turn something around.
You got to turn it on very quickly.
And coming from a DoD background, of course, we had acquisition
Yes.
pipelines and things we had
Yes.
to wait for, and by
Yes.
the time you get the tool, sorry.
Yes, it's over.
And I had the privilege of being part of an organization inside the military where
Right.
we could.
Right.
We could operate at the speed of heat.
Yes.
We got to not cut corners, but,
Sure.
but get the actual capability to the battlefield to do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
A lot quicker. And you've talked a lot about application security.
Right.
And where have you lived inside that space, and what seems to be the most interesting component right now?
The interesting component right now will probably be security.
Okay.
That is it. It's now, it's more or less DevSecOps
Sure.
is taking on its own. Hey, DevOps is okay, but if we don't have security
Sure.
in that, it's just DevOps, right?
Right.
And so now security has become that component that says, let's get this implemented.
Right.
Right. Of course, we want to get our applications out faster or what have you. But if it has holes in it, that people can hack our apps, hack our network or what have you, then that's a problem as well. So the DevSecOps now is becoming the quote unquote the buzz.
And in fact, you did a good job in one of your articles talking about we're going to get to $2.1 trillion next year. And the cost alone of cyber attacks.
Absolutely.
How do we even calculate such a number? Where's that figure coming from?
Well, that's a good question. Because a lot of times, we basically looking at our security as being, the net within our organization to keep us safe, right? And so that $1 trillion is rework.
Sure.
What I mean? Getting more quote unquote hardware applications to support our security effort, right? And so the number is basically something that we as an organization, we're saying that, okay, we need to make sure that this is done up front.
Sure.
Right, and that we're not retracing or trying to go back to fix something that we know that we could have done up front.
And it's not just security rework. I mean, in some cases, it's the entire business operation.
Absolutely.
And I can't remember what it was I was hearing, who it was, but I mean, I'm starting to hear more and more about people having to close their doors.
Oh, absolutely.
Because they can't recover from a breach.
Right.
I mean, how tragic.
Exactly right. Exactly right. And so the applications, again, it's like you stated earlier, it's not just applications, right? I mean, it's your whole infrastructure, that we have to be aware of with these vulnerabilities, right? And the DevSecOps, if we can kind of, get the organizations, right, to come together and implement this and not say, and I read something, yesterday that, the security folks are there, right? We are here, right? We're aiding you, we're helping you, right? We're not taking over, right? But
we don't want to.
We don't want to, exactly. You are still the go-to, right? But we want to work within your paradigm. Yeah. And that's basically what we're trying to do.
And we don't look like the rest of the corporation because we're not a widget, we're not a producer.
Sure.
We're in some cases a loss area.
Yes.
And so with that in mind, how have you gone into organizations to offer your services in this regard and make the case?
Man, wow, analytics, right?
Okay, good.
Where are you? Where are you trying to go? Most companies that I've gone into, they're ground zero. Yeah. And if they don't think they're ground zero, for the most part that they are.
That's the first indication.
Because they don't know.
Yeah.
A lot of companies really don't know what they need. I mean, even from a software configuration manager perspective, they don't really understand the value of that function. Now it's a DevOps function. Mm-hmm. So we're saying at Software Configuration Solutions, we could come in. I mean, I've been doing this for a long time, right? I can walk in, look at a developer and the way they're developing, what they're using as source code, version control tools, what they're using for test platforms, and understand that you need support or you need some help. Yeah. And then going in and providing the knowledge and the methodology and the processes that it's taken to get from point A to point B and do that in a rapid cadence.
Sure.
DevOps provide that, and that's what I've been doing for years now.
Now it seems, AppSec being kind of one buzzword, obviously one of the others that's huge and to some it's still quite an enigma is cloud computing or just the whole cloud. And you've raised the concern about security in the cloud. How do you do that? What's the message?
The message is DevSecOps. Put that, link that in. You got to have from a cloud perspective. Sure, we're basically looking for AWS, Azure to support that. But if you don't have the DevSecOps processing methodology, you can still do it wrong.
Sure.
Right.
Sure.
And so in order to implement this type of process within the cloud, we as companies have to have some understanding of what it takes. With the DevOps, process, period.
Sure.
Right? And so having the security portion of DevOps within the cloud, right? That's part of building your cloud infrastructure.
And then in some cases, you either have to trust the cloud service provider.
Yes.
But is there a way in which you can do your own security even though you're using an external service?
Well, you can,
Okay.
and that's by way of the organization having their own security process,
Okay.
right? And you're knowing that if I have, networks in the cloud, right, I have to make sure that I provide that security, the way we want to do business into that, right?
Sure.
Implement to that, right? But like you stated, a lot of companies, I don't know if they are anymore or allowing the service provider to provide that security.
Sure.
But it's built in.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so
And they're liable.
and they're liable,
bonded.
absolutely. So if anything goes wrong, you can always call, Amazon,
Sure.
right, or Microsoft.
Right.
But for the most part, if you wanted to implement your own security methodology and processes, it allows you for that.
Okay.
Yes.
If people are looking to grow as a company, maybe they're moving from small business to enterprise. I'd like to take a break real quick, but I'd like to pick up when we're back this idea of the difference between enterprise and maybe small business. So let's take a break and hear from our sponsors.
We'll be right back with the rest of today's show right after these brief messages from our sponsors. Cyber Resilience Institute helps build strong cyber communities designed to prevent members from attack. Like building a neighborhood watch, it takes coordination and a sharing community to protect our identities and valuables in the virtual world. Typically, we hear that organizations know they need to do something to protect their cyber assets, but don't know where to begin. Let Cyber Resilience Institute help your community create an action plan. Cyber Resilience Institute will build your community or business marketplace so that it is designed to support a collective cyber defense. Contact them for more information at cyberresilienceinstitute.org.
This is Abe Thompson again with New Cyber Frontier here in Colorado Springs at SecureSet. My in-house guest is Mr. Willie Pee, the principal executive at Software Configuration Solutions. And I just kind of posed the question to you, Willie, about if you're making the jump from sort of small potatoes to enterprise, what are the different types of concerns in DevOps?
Well, first of all, I think the concern would be budget.
Okay.
Because if you don't have the budget to have the appropriate or the adequate tools that it takes, then that's going to be a problem.
Sure.
Outside of that, if you're a small organization or a small company, I'm talking about mom and pop, right? Let's put the DevOps process in place.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Let's get the people together, right? If it's just you and your wife, honey, your operations, I'm the developer. Let's make this happen, right? And then once it starts growing, you don't have to try to catch up.
Recreate.
Recreate. You know what I mean? It's like, let's start now. And then once we get, to that enterprise status, it's already there.
So that should be in Small Business 101.
Yes.
When you go to get that small business loan,
Absolutely.
build your DevOps process.
Yes,
Excellent.
absolutely,
Excellent.
absolutely.
So if I'm out there now, I'm shopping for the service
Right.
that you can provide. My organization's obviously not big enough to implement DevSecOps on my own.
Sure.
What are you telling me that you have as a product?
I have as a product what you see here today, Willie Pee.
Yeah.
Right.
There you go.
I am that product that I've seen it when it's in its infant state. I've watched it over over 10 years now.
Sure.
Where it is, and I have to say how it has changed the culture of IT.
Sure.
And my whole position is it's not as complicated as people think it is. It just takes people to, again, come together.
Sure.
Right? Have the openness to say, this doesn't belong to me, right?
Yeah.
This is the business,
Right.
right? And so my approach in helping solve the problem is let's sit down with the groups, upper management.
Mhm.
They need to know,
Top down.
top down. If they don't understand it, then it's not going to get disseminated as far as moving forward with it, right? So we can get the executives, the business folks to say, hey, this is what we're looking at. This is how we want to revamp your organization, bring it together as one DevOps group, if you will. Then we can start putting in the processes and how
Okay.
things should work.
Sure.
That's what we do.
And what are some of the tools of the trade?
Oh, wow.
Got these techies out here.
There's a
They're-
slew of them.
Okay.
Right? AWS for your cloud services,
Right.
most is the prominent, dominant one for open source, if you will. Microsoft Azure, their platform. You have Chef as a configuration manager tool. You have Visual Studio Team Services now is the DevOps services,
Sure.
is what they call it now. You have, Kubernetes as a networking through orchestration tool. Ansible,
Okay,
the configuration manager
Yeah.
tool that you can use. From a developer perspective, quite naturally you have Java, .NET, C#. From a security perspective, we have SonarQube, Veracode.
Okay.
You have all these tools that helps with vulnerabilities within your code. That's just to name a few.
Sure, and it gives people out there a sense for, sort of the tools of the trade, but also maybe what they might want to become involved in.
Right.
Because depending on our audience member, some may want to get into this
Sure.
business.
Yes.
So what is your sort of call to action or your recruiting pitch for DevOps? If I've got people out here who want to make the jump.
My call to action is, and I say this to everybody out there, don't be so stuck on how to use a tool.
Sure.
Wrap your mind around the methodology,
Principles.
the
and-
principles,
yeah,
and
yeah.
the processes. Anybody can go and learn a tool.
Right.
If you are a techie, that's not hard for you, right?
Sure.
But if you've never been engaged with dealing with people, that may be a hindrance, right? Because that's what it's going to take,
Sure.
right? It's going to take you being able to talk to people, being able to disseminate the information.
Sure.
Not on a whiteboard. Not by giving me some numbers, right? But just being able to say, hey, this is what we need to do, guys. This is how we need to tackle this problem that we're having in our company.
Perfect.
And then you can understand the tools. You can go get the tools. The tools are there, right? But the mental aspect of DevOps is, I think, where your audience need to be more prepared for,
And I'm sure that there's a call in there not to overlook the soft skills.
Sure.
Like you said, anybody can kind of learn the tools, and most companies, if they're smart, they're taking in new blood that they can train in their ways.
Right,
at once,
absolutely, absolutely.
But you don't always find someone with people skills or soft skills
That's right.
that
That's right.
bring. And we even here we hit on this, and it's a lot of, especially my military folks and some of my others here that go through Secure Set.
Yes.
They're so reticent initially to realize that their soft skills are probably more important right now
More important.
than the technical tools that we're building into them.
Right. Absolutely. And to that point, I just got a call today for an opportunity, and skills. And I look at him. I look at the requirement, and I'm like, that's a networking guy, that's a developer person, and that's a sysadmin guy. You know what I mean? So they have all of these skills, tools for the skill set for all of these people, but they're asking for one person. That's a problem.
Yeah.
Because that one person,
unicorn does not exist.
it does not exist. Does not exist. I tell recruiters all the time. That person, this list that you have to try to find that guy, he's not in the market.
Unless you're willing to pay 3 separate paychecks
That's right.
and increase the workday by
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so I think that's another problem that the industry is having right now.
Yeah.
Is just trying to find these skills.
Interesting outlet, I think, that's helping to train at least the smaller parts of the industry. The Small Business Development Center here in town is actually trying to educate both on job descriptions,
Right.
you know, how to look for the right people, how to vet the right people.
Right.
We actually just had in town the Deputy Chief CIO for the United States.
Right.
And so she came and spoke. And,
Yes.
and just and these were, like I said, mom and pops, not just cyber,
Sure.
but all kinds of businesses
Yeah.
sitting there, some with no experience, but an awareness that they need something.
Yes.
All
Exactly
the way up
right.
all the way up to well versed.
Right. And some companies, they know they need something,
Mm-hmm.
but they don't know exactly know what.
Yeah.
Right. And then when
And
they
they become vulnerable there.
Yes.
How do we protect them?
Yeah, and education.
Okay.
We have to educate our companies.
Mhm.
And that's somewhat, where, the service that we provide can come in,
Sure.
right? They say, okay, well, you have these environments or you have this thing that you're trying to do, but you don't need that guy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Not to say that, that function doesn't exist, but you're trying to find, and then too, when you have all of these functions or skills that you're trying to put on one person,
Yeah.
how accurate or how much attention is he going to be,
Sure.
or she, right, to that, right? Because somewhere you're going to be lacking something, right? But if I could find the happy medium to, okay, you know this, but you don't quite know this, and then again to education,
Right.
allowing who you bring in to be able to be taught some of these things, right?
So my hope too is that this podcast becomes one of those sources of that type of education. But where else can the less informed go to begin that journey of getting smart? I know it's push,
Yes.
but sometimes it needs to be pulled.
Yes, I do. Plug. I do DevOps, DevOps boot camp.
Oh, fantastic.
Yes, I just did one at College of America
Okay.
last week for those students there.
Okay.
So that's kind of I think that's the kickstart,
Sure.
if you will.
Mhm.
And I'm breaking down this. So it's done on the Microsoft Azure platform,
Yeah.
but it's kind of breaking down those functions or those areas that are focus.
Sure.
But my whole idea is to get the information out. It's not so much of hey Willie, can you come in? No, let's get the information out.
Yeah.
Right. If you need that service, by all means, I'm here.
Right.
But I want to be able to get the information out to the masses
Sure.
that this is what DevOps is.
Not all about profit. I mean,
No.
there's plenty of work to be done.
Exactly.
But the industry, the community, and the country
Right.
needs unity
Yes.
in this space.
In this space.
Yeah.
Because there are standards. I told a developer, you're a .NET developer, no matter where you go, right?
Yeah.
DevOps, I don't know who is DevOps. What am I? Am I a system administrator? Am I a network administrator? Am I a developer?
You are that unicorn.
Absolutely right.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I look at the standard. Any kind of standardization needs to be wrapped around this particular function. Yeah.
Where do you do your sort of community networking and I'm sure just I can tell you like to you have wisdom. Where do you share your wisdom? Do you get involved in mentoring in the community?
Yeah, I do mentoring.
Okay.
I had a couple of ladies that I was mentoring in my office,
Sure.
teaching them the DevOps process and getting them some hands-on
Sure.
in reference to how to manipulate, that DevOps platform.
Sure.
And again, as I just stated, doing the training for the DevOps.
Sure.
I'm going to be looking into getting into the DevSecOps,
Sure.
doing some training there as well. And I do a lot of things out on social media,
Sure.
LinkedIn,
Good.
preferably, not so much Twitter, and then I'm out on Facebook,
Good.
just kind of touching base with those.
So if someone wants to find you, maybe take advantage of one of your DevOps boot camps or your direct services, how do they find you?
SCSIteam.com.
Okay.
.com.
SCSIteam.com. Willie Pee's also on LinkedIn, and you said Facebook.
Yes.
You can find him there. I tell you, Willie, it's been a delight to have you in here with us today.
I appreciate it.
And it's Also, in addition to nostalgia about the Navy, I love to find someone with a passion
Yes.
and a willingness to look across the community,
Absolutely.
not just at what
Right.
what resides maybe under your own business hat, but
Absolutely.
the rest.
And that's what we're about.
Indeed. Well, this is Abe Thompson here on New Cyber Frontier. We've had as our guest Willie Pee, the principal executive at Software Configuration Solutions. If you need help in DevOps, he's your guy.
Yes.
So thank you for joining us. Signing out from Secure Set here in Colorado Springs, this is Abe Thompson on New Cyber Frontier.
The views or opinions expressed during this podcast are not those of Colorado Technical University.
We hope you have enjoyed this episode of New Cyber Frontier. Remember to get involved. Often we think that someone else will handle privacy and security in the virtual world, but you are the only one truly in command of your virtual fate. Join our mailing list so we can keep you informed of breaking news and new releases. If you have an idea, if you have a question that you would like to hear answered, or if you want to get involved with our efforts, reach out to us at newcyberfrontier.com. We also encourage you to visit our sponsors' links, as they are the ones that really make this show possible. I want to thank each of you for supporting the show, and we look forward to seeing you back for the next episode of New Cyber Frontier.